Well, fans, welcome back to the Footy Panel. Of course, coming to you from the Colonial Brewing Company here in Port Melbourne, and ahead of a game against the Gold Coast Suns, we thought it was the right time to get Bluey McKenna back in. Bluey, first of all, how are you feeling?
A little bit better, mate. Yeah, I had to coach from the box on the weekend. I had the man flu from Tuesday to Friday last week, so feeling somewhat better. I'm a bit worried about Scotty Lucas leaning so far away from me.
I'll lean across now, Blue. I hear you're on the recovery, so it's all right. We're back in business.
I'm not contagious anymore.
Very good.
And what was the final thoughts after Saturday night? 7-goal loss in the end, but there was some good things as well.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, they got hold of us a couple of times. I thought the boys got their hands back on the ball and started to challenge Adelaide again, which is encouraging. But yeah, clearly they're, when I say a league ahead of us, but certainly a grade ahead of us where we're coming from at the moment, and just showed how clean they were under pressure with that contested football, able to get the ball forward. And I think the inside 50s were very similar, but again, I reckon they got the silver service into their forwards. They're able to take mark and kick goals, whereas we sort of coughed and spluttered a little bit at times to get our 50-odd inside 50s into our forwards. We didn't take our chances, and we're always just playing catch-up football.
Do you look at it, Bluey, and go a little bit of lack of pressure that allowed them to use the ball so well, or do you look at them and go, well, gee, they are just a very good team at using the ball well?
Yeah, I think a combination of both. I think we were able to apply pressure, but they were just still so good under pressure. And I think that's what we learn a lot of ourselves, is the fact when the pressure was applied to us, we at times look good and at times we're inconsistent with it. And again, that's our great challenge, is to build that consistency under pressure.
And a massive amount of marks inside 50, over 20 in the game. Was that the defenders getting beaten, or was that the ease of the service coming in?
Yeah, it's always not having a close, real hard look at that, but I would have thought my eye from the game said it was a combination of both. Sometimes the defenders did get lost, but sometimes some of our turnovers, certainly in the first half, we actually turned the ball over badly in the back half. And I've said to Worcester a few times over the last few years, you can't have a structure for a structure. You set up your structure, the ball's exiting your back 50, you should connect and get into our forward 50, but then there's a horrible turnover, and on the ball on the counter-attack, you just can't stop it. So there would have been a bit of the turnover stuff in the back 50, but also then the service, through a lack of pressure through the midfield, I reckon, allowed them to hit their targets inside their forward 50.
Considering the marks inside forward 50 and the supply they had, Andy McGrath did a wonderful job on Eddie Betts, didn't he?
Yeah, as you say, for a first-year player to be given, arguably the best small forward in the competition, certainly over the last couple of seasons, it was a fantastic job. And given they still had 50-odd inside 50s, you talked about all those marks, maybe because their forwards were marking, there wasn't enough ground ball for Eddie
no crumbs
to fight it out. Although he did produce a little bit of magic, but I thought Pigeon's game, because I think he would have had 20 possessions himself. So defends really well, but also gets in the game offensively well for us as well.
Not many are spruiking him for the rising star, but he's got to be right in the mix. I mean, at Gold Coast, he had a lot of young players, had an impact straight away. How would you compare McGrath's first season to some of those talented kids that came in and had, like the Swallows and Bendels, etc.?
Jago O'Meara.
Jago was pretty handy.
He wouldn't be far off Jago, the year Jago had for us.
That's a big call, because Jago was amazing that year.
Yeah, well, his first year, we had probably when we had stopped winning 3-3 games, we started winning 8 and 10 games, so it was more when we were able to play more of adult football, if you like, men's football. So Jago was a big part of that, and basically what we've seen, and certainly our counter-attack off the back line for us this year, Andy started a lot of that, Connor McKenna's done a bit of that, some of the other defenders have too, but certainly Pigeon's done a fair amount of that heavy lifting, if you like, and counter-attacking by hand and by foot off half-back. He's driven, so he's not far behind Jago, that's for sure.
Are they clearly the best side you've played this year? I mean, in Adelaide, when you played them too, they were very slick that night as well.
Yeah, that was 80-odd points. This round again, 40-odd points, so 60-point sort of average. Just their ability to absorb that pressure and then use the ball themselves under pressure and hit targets. And again, they get that continuity, they get their game going, and they're very hard to stop.
A real momentum changer, the free kick late in the third quarter. Were you surprised at the free kick, or do you look at it, I mean, there's a lot of debate around it, isn't it, in recent times?
Some interesting decisions on the weekend.
Yeah, across a few games. Disappointing, I guess, is the question, isn't it, around when you got momentum that a free kick's paid?
Yeah, it is. My old man used to be a goal umpire, and he used to say, you can bring your Philadelphian lawyers around, but once they make their decision, just get on with it. But yeah, there's certainly a sigh or a moan or a groan, if you like. I would never say that an umpire's decision is a momentum killer. I mean, that shouldn't factor into your. I mean, they go either way, and you got to live with the bad ones and get on with the good ones, so to speak. And it's just part of the game. But I wouldn't have thought that was the cause for us losing that impetus, if you like, going after the football and starting to own the game as best we could.
You mentioned the midfield before. The clearances were pretty even on the weekend. The previous couple of weeks they've beaten badly around the stoppages. Is that one area of focus over the summer? With, I guess, Job going, probably hasn't been as good around the stoppages this year. Is that what the team needs to get in there? A couple of really good stoppage players?
It was just finding that connection. That's the, with Matty Leuenberger, who rucked all last year for us. And when you look at our midfield group, Craig Bird, David Zaharakis and Junior Merritt were basically our first three picked last year. You fast forward 12 months and all of a sudden it's Dyson Heppel, Jobe Watson, Zach Merritt's been in. Craig Bird hasn't been in a lot, of course. He's come in and played one really good game against St Kilda. So just getting that connection. But then Louis goes out for 6 weeks and then Tom Bell-Chambers comes in. And just talking to him a couple of weeks ago, he said, well, I've never played 15 games in a row before, and I've never rucked 15 games in a row before as well, So finding that connection between, obviously, the ruckman and our mids is certainly important. Our last 6 weeks, I think we'd actually competed. We're almost flatlined as far as scores, clearances for and against. So that had been good. The last 2 weeks had been poor, but previous to that, I think we'd won the clearances by 23. So we're just finding our consistency around that stoppage structure, if you like, around the mid-arc, around the centre bounces. We're certainly getting some stoppages in our forward 50, but still working on that chemistry amongst the boys is certainly going to be a factor over the summer.
Talking about connection, it appears the last month or so, Hooker and Danaher working really well together inside the forward 50. Yeah,
I mean, I'd still love another. Well, Jimmy Stewart's down there, and he's starting to pick up the crumbs, if you like, and add some marking targets up the ground, and also then he's starting to hit the scoreboard as well. And he's kicked I would think about 6 or 7 goals now over the last 3 or 4 weeks. He's actually been adding to the scoreboard, which is really well. The other thing he adds too, that again he doesn't impact the scoreboard, he does through Hooksy and Danaher, because he gets up the ground and actually is able to mark and then transfer that ball forward. Well, guess what? When he's doing that and transferring the ball forward, well, that's where Danaher and Hooker are. Yeah. If he wasn't playing, they'd have to get up the ground, and all of a sudden we've only got one target forward. So his ability to do some legwork for the lads, and vice versa for the other two boys too. When Joey's up the ground, that means Hooksy's deep, and then when Hooksy's up the ground, then Joey's deep. So certainly the fall between those two, but if not those three, is working really well.
And 2 weeks ago it was Cale Hooker's little head rub that caused a bit of talk, and then on the weekend it was Joey and Rory Atkins. What did you make of it when you saw it?
Oh, mate, I've only seen the replay of it, but from
do you even notice it?
No.
When the game's on?
No.
And they are good mates. It's not random players.
They played junior footy together, and I'm sure, look, if he'd run down the ground and kicked a goalie, well, it'd be a bit hard to jump on Joey's head, of course, because he's so big. But I'm sure, what goes around comes around.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of fun. But do you understand how some people think it's sort of early in the second quarter, the game's pretty level, and players are doing that while they think it's not the right thing to do, or is it just people being far too sensitive?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of that. I can understand why they question it. I think part of the conversation was Adelaide, did they kick the next 6 or 7 goals? Which I think is irrelevant.
Yeah, correct. It had nothing to do with that.
Because I think if you asked the players out on the field who noticed it, probably of the 36, 6 or 7 did in the immediate area. The rest don't have any idea. It's more the broadcaster decides to focus on it for a good 5 or 8 minutes and put some tweets up on the screen that we carry on. But the game itself, and I'm sure the coaches, half of them, once a goal's kicked, they're looking down at or some vision, or they're looking at their setups or forward of the footy. The rest of the game just continues on. So certainly we know that's how Joe plays. He plays with a real energy. Move on, I think.
I'm not sure Tex Walker would be looking down 120 metres down the ground going, oh, you see what I'm going to fire up now.
Exactly. Because, we're going to kick the next 6 now. I don't think anyone remonstrated.
No one remonstrated.
So who cares? Yeah. I guess we've got to find things to talk about, but it is really a who cares incident.
Now, the Sun. What happened with the Suns last week? What was your emotion watching on from afar? People once again saying, a footy club's not going to work on the Gold Coast. It's soulless. It's got nothing. I mean, how do you feel when you see that about your old club?
It's disappointing. I mean, obviously the AFL have made that decision to go there for all the right reasons. Obviously, with having the 2 teams in Queensland, I think it's the right decision. I always knew in my heart of hearts it was always going to take a long time. I mean, even when they were thinking about extending the stadium from 20-odd thousand to 40-odd thousand. Said, hang on, just wait a little bit here, you know. I said, just look up the road. And at that stage, when we just entered the competition, you know, Brisbane had been off, 10 years since they'd won 3 in a row just about. Their crowds were down, their numbers were down. Obviously, sponsorship wasn't great up there, and then Brisbane's a city. You know, Gold Coast is not a city. So hang on, just cool our jets a little bit here. This is going to take a long time. And so I'm still of that belief it's going to take a long time. A lot of the support on the Gold Coast is a lot of expats. I mean, North supporters will go and support Gold Coast as long as North Melbourne aren't playing. Essendon supporters will come and support Gold Coast. So they want to see footy, but that's going to take a long time. I mean, it is a place where a lot of retirees go, all that sort of stuff. So football's not their number one sport as well. It's not like Gold Coast has gone and joined WA or South Australia in a far place outside the CBD. It's actually gone into Queensland, a rugby league territory. So it's going to take a lot of time. So they just have to keep. And look, we were in the early days doing a lot of hours in the community to make sure that the fans were going to stick fat. The problem is the wins haven't come along, and as we know, when wins come along, everything comes along. You know, support, fans, sponsorship, the players want to stay, all those type of things. And unfortunately, they just haven't been able to tick over enough wins to get that buy-in from the players and probably the community.
It'll be a generational type. 20 years one, it'll be the kids that you went out into the schools and showed the game, that when they get to an age where they're 19 or 20, that they can come along on their own accord, I imagine.
And I remember, I mean, even West Coast, I was a player at West Coast in 1989. I mean, we used to joke about Peter Kamitsky, Peter Rent-A-Crowd. We were getting 7,000 and 9,000. This is WA football.
Yeah, Footy State.
Yeah, you know, actually have grown up playing Aussie rules football. Here's their team in the AFL struggling to get support, 9,000-10,000 people at games at Subiaco Oval before the redevelopment, before we became successful. Now you don't have to shut the gates almost 6 months out, you know, because the line's that long. But that's a lot easier in WA because that's what they've grown up on. Gold Coast and Queensland, it's going to take a lot longer.
What about Dean Solomon? You know Dean Solomon well, and Essendon supporters know him really well. What sort of coach is he?
Oh yeah, very measured, a lot more detail to Solly than I reckon some of his teammates would have thought. I mean, he's very, which surprised me when I was coaching with him. He loves his detail. He doesn't like to change a lot. He's very measured, and as I said, he'll be good. He's doing his level 4. I think he's performing that really well. So whether he puts his hand in it, I think as I said, he's a very measured person. He may not think that he's done enough, time with different coaches. He's had myself now. He's had Rocket. Does he need to learn from another book potentially just before he takes that plunge? But yeah, from all reports, he's the players love him. He's that type of person that people do gravitate to, and he'll demand those standards that only Solly could demand.
What sort of coach do you think they need, Bluey? I know you're 3 years since you've been there, but knowing a little bit about the club, the culture, and the community as such. What sort of or type of coach is best suited to that role?
Yeah, I mean, I heard development type coaches and all that. I think most coaches these days, I mean, Clarko, you'd argue that he's a development coach. I mean, he continues to develop coaches and develop players. I think most coaches have that in them. Do you need I don't think you need a name per se, because Mick Malthouse could go up there and the community's still not going to know him a great deal. I always say about Carmichael Hunt and Gary Ablett, if the 100 supporters walk down the road, I mean, there'd be 80 on Carmichael's side and 20 on Gary's side. That probably has changed a little bit, of course, but
they need a winning coach. That's what they need.
Well, yeah.
In terms of in that market, they just need to win.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, a combination of when I say a hardliner, but certainly a coach that's got a good track record of winning, because that's what they need. And I don't think they're far off. And I mean, Rocket's been, well, not blessed, but cursed with the injury stick as well. So he hasn't been able to have that continuity with his better players. And that's, you've seen starts and patches where they've been able to play 3 or 4 really good games and put that in a row, but they need to turn that into 6, 7 and 8. And then when you start to do that, guess what? You start to win enough games to get into the finals.
They don't seem good defensively though, do they, Scotty?
No, they don't. And even I saw some of that game on Saturday night and a couple of games that I've covered live, and they're very attacking and they move the ball really quick, but it's almost when the opposition get the ball that they are too easy to score against. No doubt about it, and I'm sure that'll be a focus on Essendon this week, just looking at how they can pick them apart and move the ball quickly, which the Bombers like to do, to really put some scoreboard pressure on them.
Well, Bluey, good to see you on the mend. Thanks for dropping by again.
Thanks, boys. Thanks for the Vicks too.
Good
Thanks
luck
for the
on
rub.
now. Pleasure. Always here to help you out. Scotty, good to see you again. Remember, Bomber fans, it's Gold Coast Essendon Saturday night. Barrack for the Bombers, and let's hope for the Demons, Eagles, and a couple other teams above us to have a slip up as well, including the Western Bulldogs. We'll see you next week on the Footy Panel.